بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In the previous lesson, we explained the meanings of Ḥadīth and khabar. Very quickly, I would also like to touch on another word, and that is athar. The reason I want to discuss this word is that it features in the name of this book. As mentioned on the previous page, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimullah gave the initial name Nukhbatul Fikri fi Mustalahi Ahlil Athari. Therefore, it is essential that we explain this word athar. Linguistically, athar comes in three meanings. The first is that it comes in the meaning of baqiyya. In English, it refers to the remnants of a thing, the remains or traces of something. And from this meaning, you also use the term for footsteps and footprints. Likewise, it comes in the meaning of effect and impact. And thirdly, it is used to refer to something that is really beautiful. This is the view of mubarrad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word athar at around 13 places in the Noble Quran, and each time it comes in either the first or the second meaning. For example, in Surah Rum, in verse number 50, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَانظُرْ إِلَىٰ آثَارِ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ كَيْفَ يُحْيِي الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. Look at the effects of Allah's mercy, how He gives life to the earth after its death. So you can see it comes here in the second meaning. In Surah Safat, in verse number 70, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَهُمْ عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ يُهْرَعُونَ. So they run in their footsteps. Footsteps are the traces that a person leaves when he is walking. Hence, this complies with the first meaning that we presented. Likewise, in Surah Zukhruf, in verse number 22 and 23, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّا عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ مُهْتَدُونَ. And we are on their footprints fully guided. And in the next verse, وَإِنَّا عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ مُقْتَدُونَ. And we are following their footsteps. As for its use in Usulul Ḥadīth, the word athar is used interchangeably with Ḥadīth and khabar. Many muhaddithin use the term athar in the same meaning as Ḥadīth and khabar. So that would mean that it encompasses anything that is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, and also the statements and actions of the Sahaba, and the statements and actions of the Tabi'in. There were scholars of Hadith who wrote books, and they used the term athar or the plural athar in the titles of their books, yet their books contains narrations that reaches up to the Prophet ﷺ, and also includes the statements and actions of Sahaba and also that of the Tabi'in. For example, Imam Muhammad rahimahullah, he called his book Kitabul Athar. Likewise, Imam Tahawi rahimahullah, he wrote the famous book which is taught in the final year, Sharh Ma'aniyul Athar. The full name of this book is Sharh Ma'aniyul Athar al-Mukhtalafa al-Ma'thura. This is the full name, so you can see he used the word athar also, and he used the word ma'thura. And likewise, in his other book, Sharh Mushkilul Athar. So again, he's using the word athar, and it encompasses anything from the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, and the Tabi'in. Likewise, Ibn Jarir al-Tabari rahimahullah, he named his book Tahdhibul Athar. And in this very book of Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, here's the word athar in the title, Nuzha an-Naḍar fi tawdīḥi nukhbatil fikri fi mustalahi ahlil athar. It is also in this light that scholars refer to the supplications of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as al-ad'iya al-ma'thura. The prayers and the supplications are from the Prophet ﷺ, and they are being described with the word athar. So this is according to majority of the scholars of Hadith, that even if anything is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, then too it could be described with the word athar. The word athar and athar encompasses everything from the Prophet ﷺ also, as well as from the Sahaba and the Tabi'een. Mullah Abdul Hayy Laknawi rahmallah attributed this view of athar and hadith having the same meaning to majority of the scholars. In Dhafr al-Amani, he first defines athar as huwa al-marwiyu an Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam aw an sahabiyyin aw an tabi'iyyin mutlaqan. It is that which is reported from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or from a companion, or from a tabi'i unrestrictedly. He uses the word mutlaqan. In the footnotes, Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda rahimullah explains that mutlaqan means that irrespective whether it is a senior tabi'i or whether it is a junior tabi'i, you may use the word athar when attributing anything to them. Mullah Abdul Hayy Laknawi rahmallah then says, وَعَلَيْهِ جُمْهُورُ الْمُحَدِّثِينَ مِنَ السَّلَفِ وَالْخَلَفِ وهو المختار عند الجمهور كما ذكره النووي في شرح صحيح مسلم. He says وعليه جمهور المحدثين من السلف والخلف. Upon this view are the majority of muhaddithin من السلف, from the earlier scholars, والخلف, and from the latter day scholars. وهو المختار عند الجمهور, and this is the chosen opinion according to the majority. كما ذكره النووي في شرح صحيح مسلم, just as Imam Nawawi rahimahullah mentioned in his commentary of Sahih Muslim. Since it is the view of the majority and not all the scholars, there will be those scholars who differed, that minority who differed. And who are those who differed? So it is the scholars of Khurasan. The fuqaha of Khurasan, they only used the word athar for the reports of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, which is known as mawqufat, as we will do later on in the kitab. And they did not use the term for anything that is related from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If something pertained to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then it cannot be called athar according to them. The famous Shafi'i scholar of the 5th century, Alama Abu al-Qasim Abdurrahman ibn Muhammad al-Furani al-Marwazi rahimullah, he said, الفقهاء يقولون الخبر ما كان عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم والأثر ما يروى عن الصحابة. The fuqaha, so referring to the fuqaha of Khurasan, they say that khabar is that which is reported from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you want to attribute anything to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you use the word khabar. And athar is used for that which is reported from the companions. This quotation of Alama Abu al-Qasim Abdurrahman ibn Muhammad al-Furani al-Marwazi, it's also quoted in an-Naḍar on page 11. So as a parenthetical comment, in the footnotes it is written that Alama Marwazi rahmallah passed away in the year 388 Hijri. But this is incorrect, as he was only born in the year 387 Hijri. So my objective here, as I mentioned before, is that besides just teaching you ulumul hadith, I also have this goal of changing your entire mindset and having an impact, having an athar on your temperament and on the way, the outlook that you have towards ilm. That when you read something, you need to have this tahqiqi mizaj. Sheikh Muhammad Awama, he used the word ta'ammuq. That if you are reading and you find in the footnotes of an-Naḍar that he passed away in the year 388 Hijri, then you cannot just accept it. You need to take note that he was born in the year 387 Hijri. He could not be 1 year old and passed away and mention the statement. So therefore, we refer to other books to verify his date of demise. In Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, Imam Dhahabi rahimahullah says that he passed away in the year 461 Hijri. توفي سنة 61 و400. This is in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala in volume 18 on page 265. He says that he passed away in the year 461. Likewise, Ibn Khallikan, he says in Wafiyatul A'yan wa Anba'i Abna'i Zaman, وكانت وفاته في شهر رمضان سنة 61 و400 بمدينة مر وهو ابن 73 سنة رحمه الله تعالى. So he says وكانت وفاته في شهر رمضان, that he passed away in the month of Ramadan in the year 461 Hijri in the town of Maru. And he mentions وهو ابن 73 سنة, he was 73 years old, rahimahullah ta'ala, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him. So all this is mentioned just in passing. The final view to mention concerning the word athar is that according to the usuliyin, athar relates only to that which is attributed or transmitted from the tabi'in. So even if something is transmitted from the sahaba, then too you cannot use the word athar. So this here is in contrast to what the scholars of Khurasan mentioned, because they mentioned that if anything is from the Sahaba, then you can use the word athar. But the usuliyun, they are saying that no, if it is from the Sahaba, then you cannot use the word athar. It has to be from the tabi'in. However, moving forward, as this book is a book in Hadith, on the principles of Hadith, so therefore we will follow the understanding of the terminology according to the scholars of Hadith. Now looking at the text, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah continues by saying, فَهُوَ بِاعْتِبَارِ وُصُولِهِ إِلَيْنَا إِمَّا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُ طُرُقٌ أي أسانيد كثيرة لأن طرقا جمع طريق وفعيل في الكثرة يجمع على فعل بضمتين وفي القلة على أفعل والمراد بالطرق الأسانيد والإسناد حكاية طريق المتن. In Nukhbat al-Fikr, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah commenced with a discussion on the amount of parts and channels via which a narration reached us. So in Nuzha an-Naḍar, in the commentary, he delves into a few linguistic points concerning concerning some words that he used in Nukhbat al-Fikr. So although he shares some detail here, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah does not delve into the linguistic intricacies very often, but he rather keeps focus on the subject matter, and that is usulul hadith, the principles of hadith. However, some commentators have dissected the words and examined the grammar at many more places in this book. For example, Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah delves into a lot of linguistic and grammatical explanations in his commentary. Hence, Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda rahimahullah remarked, لولا أن أدخل فيه رحمه الله تعالى من بحوث النحو والاشتقاق والبديع والمنطق ما لا دخل له في حل المتن ولا في توضيح المصطلح، وبالغ في بعض المواضع في مناقشة أقوال بعض الشراح والمحشين السابقين بما هو بعلم الجدل أشبه منه بعلم المصطلح. That Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah frequently goes on a tangent and digresses, and he discusses many things that are not related to the objective of this book, and that is the principles of hadith. He delves into laws concerning nahwa and balagha and mantiq, etc. So it would have been better if he did not delve into all these type of subjects and topics. Nonetheless, our focus is on the science of ulumul hadith. Therefore, we will not elaborate on grammatical points, and we will not spend time explaining why the author chose a specific word or constructed a sentence in a particular manner. You know, many times the author himself would not know that the usage of a specific word in a particular sentence has that special benefit that the commentator is explaining. In fact, Mullah Ali Qari rahmallah himself said, وَإِلَّا فَكَمْ مِنْ شَارِحٍ أَظْهَرَ مِنَ الْمَعَانِ مَا لَمْ يَخْطُرْ بِبَالِ صَاحِبِ الْمَبَانِ. That many times a commentator will expound on such meanings that the person who wrote the initial text, it didn't even cross his mind. Thus, we will only discuss the usage of words and grammar where the author himself has discussed about them, and will not explore all the grammatical and linguistic intricacies at other places, as this is not our focus. So since the author brought forth a discussion of grammar and linguistics at this point in the book, we too will discuss it here. Before turning to the text, we must understand the following, and we must understand basically the point that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah intends to make. So the initial point that he wanted to make is that a narration could either be narrated through multiple different pathways, or it could be narrated via just a few pathways, or it could be transmitted just through one pathway. So this is the important point that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah wanted to make. Once this is understood, we can now look at the text which discusses the lugha and discusses other aspects. So Hafiz Ibn Hajar rahimahullah says, فَهُوَ بِاعْتِبَارِ وُصُولِهِ إِلَيْنَا, that a khabar, considering how it reached us, إِمَّا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُ طُرُقٍ, it could either have multiple paths. Now he used the word turuq, so he's explaining it, a asanid kathira, meaning that it has many chains. Why? Because turuq is the plural of the word tariq. So Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah used the word turuq. This is the plural of the word tariq, and the literal meaning of tariq is a path. Mullah Ali Qari rahimahullah, he defines turuq as بمعنى سبيل, وهو ما يوصل إلى المقصود الحسي استعير للموصل إلى المطلوب المعنوي, that it means a pathway, and it is generally used to refer to a destination which you could see, and thereafter isti'aratan, it was metaphorically used for a goal and an objective, something which is your ma'nawi destination. In dissecting the text, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah explains why he used the word turuq. So the singular of the word turuq is tariq. Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah clarifies why he brought the plural of tariq on the scale of fu'ul and not on the scale of af'ul. Why he mentioned it as turuq as opposed to atruq. So he says, وفعيل في الكثرة يجمع على فعل بضمتين وفي القلة على أفعل. An Arabic word that comes on the scale of fa'il. So for example, the word tariq, the word sabil, etc. If you want to make a jam'ul kathra, then you have to bring it on the scale of fu'ul. So you bring it with two dhammas. And if you want to bring it on the scale of jam'ul qillah, so that is the plural between 3 to 10, then the scale will be af'ul. In Arabic, you know that you have two types of plural. The first is jam'ul qillah and the second is jam'ul kathra. If something is plural and it is a few in number, that is, it is from 3 to 10, then it will be called jam'ul qillah. And if something is plural and it is a lot, it is more than 10, then it will be called jam'ul kathra. So jam'ul kathra is from 10 ila ma la nihayata lahu, to that which has no end for it. Anything from 10 to an unlimited amount is jam'ul kathra. The plural of jam'ul qillah will be on the scale of af'ul, whilst the plural of jam'ul kathra will be on the scale of fu'ul if the singular comes on the scale of fa'il. So in this case, it did come on the scale of fa'il, it is tariq. Now applying this grammar rule to the text, if Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah intended to demonstrate that a narration is transmitted via 3 to 10 pathways, then he would have brought the plural as atruq on the scale of af'ul. However, since he intended to indicate that there are many pathways, that is, there are more than 10 pathways, he used the plural of jam'ul kathra, and therefore he used the plural as turuq on the scale of fu'ul. An important point to note here is that because he used this word turuq as jam'ul kathra, there were many criticisms which were leveled against Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah. Why? Because all this here is leading to a discussion on a mutawatir narration, which you will understand in the next lesson inshaAllah. So even a mutawatir narration can be transmitted with less than 10 pathways. In an-Naḍar it is mentioned that يرد عليه أنه يقتضي أن يكون أقل عدد يتحقق معه جمع الكثرة مأخوذ في التواتر وهو خلاف ما ذهب إليه الجمهور. Nevertheless, this here pertains to the plural. Now moving on, in spite of the fact that he used the word turuq, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah points out that there is a technical term for this in this field. He says, وَالْمُرَادُ بِالطُّرُقِ الْأَسَانِيد. The meaning of turuq is asanid, that many chains. So since he is defining a plural, turuq, he brought the plural of the technical term al-asanid. This plural contradicts grammar. This word asanid is made up by the scholars of Ḥadīth. Ulama al-Qani rahimahullah, he said, ولا يكاد يوجد في كلام المحدثين إلا الأسانيد لكنها ليست جمعا قياسيا ولا سماعيا لعدم سماعها إلا من المحدثين دون العرب. So he says that this you will hear very frequently that the muhaddithin, they use the plural asanid, but this here does not conform with the grammatical laws, nor it is something which was just heard amongst Arabs. Rather, it is something which has been coined by the muhaddithin. Then Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah defines the term al-asanid with the singular al-Isnaad, and he says, وَالْإِسْنَادِ حِكَايَةُ طَرِيقِ الْمَتْنِ. That Isnaad is the transmitting and relating the root of the statement. Now here there is an objection in توجيه النظر. Ulama طاهر الجزائري rahimahullah said, وَأَمَّا الْإِسْنَادِ فَقَدْ عَرَفْتَ أَنَّهُ مَصْدَرُ أَسْنَدَ وَلِذَلِكَ لَا يُثَنَّى وَلَا يُجْمَعُ. That the word isnad, you know, it is the masdar of the word asnada. It comes from bab if'al. Isnad is the masdar, and from there you get the word asnada yusnadu isnadan. So therefore he says, وَلِذَلِكَ لَا يُثَنَّى وَلَا يُجْمَعُ. Therefore it cannot have a dual or a plural. However, in response to this, you may remember the rules concerning a masdar, whether it can have a dual or plural. You done all of this in sarf and nahwa. It is only prohibited when the masdar denotes upon a jam'ul fa'al. However, when a masdar comes for ta'addud, then there is no difference of opinion, and it is permissible for a masdar to have a dual and a plural. In the Alfiya of Ibn Malik, it is stated, وَمَا لِتَوْكِيدٍ فَوَحِّدْ أَبَدًا وَثَنِّ وَاجْمَعْ غَيْرَهُ وَأَفْرِدًا. Likewise, Badruddin al-Muradi, he said, هو المختص معدودا كان أو غير معدود. أما المعدود فلا خلاف في جواز تثنيته وجمعه قياسا. So you can see he's saying that there is no difference of opinion that it will be permissible to bring the dual and the plural if it is for معدود, to count multiple things. وأما غيره من المختص ففي تثنيته وجمعه خلاف. So the preferred view is that it is permissible. An interesting incident comes to mind, and that is what is narrated regarding Mutanabbi. He once went to a gathering of the ruler, وفيه أبو علي الآمدي الأديب المشهور. In the gathering was Abu Ali al-Amidi, the famous scholar of eloquence. فأنشد المتنبي أبياتا. Mutanabbi started to say some verses of poetry, and then he said the couplet, إنما التهنيات للأكفاء. So Abu Ali al-Amidi immediately objected and said, التهنية مصدر والمصدر لا يجمع. That the word التهنية is a masdar, and there is no plural for a masdar. So Mutanabbi politely nudged the person next to him and asked, a Muslimun huwa? Is this person a Muslim? So that person jumped up and said that Subhanallah, هذا أستاذ الجماعة Abu Ali al-Amidi. Glory be to Allah. This is the teacher of our group, Abu Ali al-Amidi. Then Mutanabbi very calmly responded, فإذا صلى المسلم وتشهد أليس يقول التحيات? When a Muslim performs his prayer, then does he not say in every prayer at-tahiyyatu? So this too is a masdar, and it is the plural of a masdar. فَخَجَلَ أَبُو عَلِي وَقَامَ. Abu Ali al-Amidi became embarrassed and he excused himself from that gathering. He stood up and left. Thus, our proof that a masdar can have a plural is that every Muslim, including those who object, use a plural of a masdar in every prayer of theirs. Nevertheless, reverting back to our main topic, the meaning of tariq in this text is that an individual narrates from another person who in turn narrates from someone else. For example, the Prophet ﷺ said something and his companions heard it. From those companions, only one companion narrates it to the tabi'een. From the tabi'een, only one tabi'een narrates it. So this narration will have one tariq. It will have one pathway. We also call this a chain, a sanad. If there are multiple people in every link, for example, there are a few narrators who are quoting many people who in turn are also transmitting from numerous other individuals who are quoting many Sahaba, who are quoting from the Prophet ﷺ, then this would mean that there are many pathways or multiple chains. In Nukhbatul Fikr, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentioned that a narration could be narrated through multiple pathways and without a specified number of people in every link, meaning that there are multiple narrators quoting from numerous people, but the amount is not confined. He then explained that when a narration is transmitted like this, then such a narration will be called mutawatir. That is the main and important lesson to remember. وَالْإِسْنَادُ حِكَايَةُ طَرِيقِ الْمَتْنِ. And Isnaad is transmitting and relating, the act of transmitting and relating the root of a statement. Here we have two words, sanad and isnad. Isnad is literally defined as al-i'timad, which means to rely on something. It is explained as ما أسندت إليه من جدار ونحوه. So we might translate it as support or as a pillar. It is also used for ما قابلك من الجبل مما على من السفح. So that is with regards to the literal meaning. As for the technical meaning, there is a ostensible contradiction here. If you look at this juncture, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah defined isnad as hikayatu tariq al-matni. that transmitting and relating the root of a statement. However, turn to page 106. On page 106, you can see here he defines isnad as هو الطريق الموصل إلى المتن. It is the route which reaches up to the matn. So you may notice that there is a difference between these two definitions. Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah used the word hikaya. Hikaya refers to the act of relating, the act of transmitting, the action of mentioning or narrating or ascribing. So according to this definition, the action of saying the names of those who narrated to us, who in turn are quoting from those who narrated to them, and they in turn are taking the names of those who informed them, this action is called isnad. This is further supported by the fact that isnad comes from babu if'al, and one of the khususiyat, one of the specialities of babu if'al is that such words have a transitive meaning. However, on page 106, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah explained isnad as the chain. So it refers to the chain itself. So that is, isnad comes in the meaning of a noun, the exact and same meaning as the word sanad. There is no action involved. It does not refer to the act of relating, rather it refers to the actual chain. Now, in order to establish the correct meaning as to whether isnad refers to the act of narrating or whether it comes in the meaning of sanad, we need to study a little further. For this, we will first refer to other books and then return back to this book. In the book Al-Isnad min ad-Din, on page 11, Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda rahimahullah says, قال العلماء الإسناد هو مصدر من قولك أسندت الحديث إلى قائله إذا رفعت إليه بذكر ناقله. That the ulama say that isnad is the masdar of your statement أسندت الحديث إلى قائله, and this is when you raise the narration by mentioning the transmitters. So this was mentioned on page 11. Then on page 14 he says وعرفوا الإسناد بقولهم هو حكاية طريق متن الحديث. They define isnad by saying it is transmitting and relating the root of a statement of a hadith. So to emphasize that isnad refers to the action of narrating, he said وعلى هذا فالإسناد هو قولك أو قول البخاري مثلا حدثنا فلان قال حدثنا فلان، والسند هو أولئك الرواة الناقلون المذكورون قبل متن الحديث. So here you can see that he's saying that isnad is your action, your statement of saying, oh Imam Bukhari, or any narrator statement, an action of saying that حدثنا فلان قال حدثنا فلان. And sanad is the noun هو أولئك الرواة الناقلون المذكورون قبل متن الحديث. So this emphatically illustrates that sanad and isnad have two different meanings. However, this creates a huge problem because when grading a hadith, scholars of hadith frequently say هذا إسناد صحيح, هذا إسناد ضعيف. This isnad is a sahih and this isnad is da'if. So they use the word isnad as a noun. On the basis of the definition provided by Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, as well as on the basis of the text that we just quoted from Al-Isnad min ad-Din, the meaning of the above statement would be that the act of narrating is correct, or that which is the way in which this was transmitted is weak. Thus, the muhaddith is not grading the narration, but rather he is informing us whether the person used the correct words when transmitting the narration. So as such, this statement could be used in relation to a weak narration or even for fabrication, for fabricated narrations. Because if a liar uses the correct words of ada, he uses the correct words of transmitting a narration, then it will be accurate to say that this method, this way of transmitting is correct. So that means you can then say هذا إسناد صحيح for a fabricated narration. You can say هذا إسناد صحيح for a chain that is filled with liars and sinners if they use the correct words when transmitting the narration. However, the issue with this definition is that scholars use the above statement in books of takhrij, books that give the source and status of a narration, and also when they are grading narrations and they say هذا إسناد صحيح. So if you are going to adopt this definition, then there would be no benefit to the statement, because the scholar would not be informing us about the authenticity or the weakness of the narration, but rather he is just telling us whether the act of narrating was done correctly or not. So clearly this is not the case. Thus, Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda clarifies on page 15 that the muhaddithin use the term isnad and sanad interchangeably. المحدثون يستعملون كل من السند والإسناد في موضع الآخر. The muhaddithun use isnad and sanad in place of the other. Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda acquires this from a very famous statement of Allama Ibn Jama'ah rahimahullah that he mentioned in his book Al-Manhal al-Rawi. المحدثون يستعملون السند والإسناد لشيء واحد. It is in Al-Manhal al-Rawi on page 29 and 30. The muhaddithun use sanad and isnad for one and the same thing. Allama Laqani rahimahullah quotes from Allama Baqa'i rahimahullah, the student of Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, that he said, وَأَمَّا فِي الْإِصْطِلَاحِ فما يشك محدث أن السند والإسناد مترادفان ومعناها طريق المتن. Likewise, in his commentary of Nuzha, Allama Munawi rahimahullah said, فلا يشك محدث أن السند والإسناد مترادفان. In Mawsu'a Ulum al-Hadith wa Fununihi, Sayyid Abdul Majid al-Ghawri mentions, وَالْمُحَدِّثُونَ يَسْتَعْمِلُونَ كُلًّا مِنَ السَّنَدِ وَالْإِسْنَادِ فِي مَوْضِعِ الْآخَرِ وَيُعْرَفُ الْمُرَادُ بِالْقَرَائِنِ. Thus, when explaining this very text of Nuzha, Mullah al-Qari rahimahullah said in his commentary, وَالْمُرَادُ بِهِ رِجَالُ الْحَدِيثِ فَإِنَّهُمْ يُسْنِدُونَ الْخَبْرَ إِلَى مَا يَنْتَهِي إِلَيْهِ السَّنَدِ فَمَدَارُ صِحَّتِهِ وَغَيْرِهَا عَلَيْهِمْ فَالْإِسْنَادِ بِمَعْنَى السَّنَدِ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ الْإِعْتِمَادِ. In short, isnad has two meanings as mentioned in Dalil al-Falah. عزو الحديث إلى قائله مسندا, that's the first meaning, and the second meaning is سلسلة الرجال الموصلة للمتن وهو بهذا المعنى مرادف للسند. It is in this light that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah defined sanad and isnad in both ways. He used them interchangeably. Another proof to illustrate that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah was convinced that sanad and isnad both have the same meaning is that we explained isnad here. But if you turn to page 59, so you can see on line 4, he says, وَالسَّنَدُ تَقَدَّمَ تَعْرِيفُهُ. The definition of sanad has already passed. So that means he already explained what's the meaning of sanad. Now from this point, from the beginning of the book until page 59, you will not find any definition of sanad. Rather, you're only going to find this definition of isnad. So you can see he's using the word sanad, but he is referring to the definition that he gave for isnad, which indicates that according to him, sanad and isnad have the exact same meaning. So due to all this that we mentioned, because these two words are used interchangeably, we will find scholars using them in opposite ways too. So that is, they will use the word sanad in the meaning of the act of narrating. For example, in Al-Khulasa fi Ilm Mustalah al-Hadith on page 33, it is mentioned, قال الطيبي السند إخبار عن طريق المتن. Likewise, in Mawsu'a Ulum al-Hadith wa Fununihi, Sayyid Abdul Majid al-Ghawri explains sanad as wal-ikhbar an tariq al-matni. He's giving the definition of sanad exactly like how Ibn Hajar rahmallah defined isnad. Similarly, if you turn to page 37 here of Nuzha, in a footnote, Shaykh Nuruddin Itr, he says that وَالسَّنَدُ حِكَايَةُ رِجَالِ الْحَدِيثِ الَّذِينَ رَوَوْهُ عَنْ بَعْضِهِمْ. Sanad is the act of narrating. Likewise, Shaykh Tariq ibn Iwadullah, he mentioned in the footnotes of his print as well, وَالسَّنَدُ وَالْإِسْنَادُ وَالطَّرِيقُ سَوَاءٌ عِنْدَ الْمُحَدِّثِينَ وَمَنْ فَرَّقَ بَيْنَ السَّنَدِ وَالْإِسْنَادِ فَبِحَسْبِ الْمَعْنَى اللُّغْوِي لَا الْإِصْطِلَاحِ فَأَمَّا مِنْ حَيْثُ الْإِصْطِلَاح فَالْمُحَدِّثُونَ يَسْتَعْمِلُونَ السَّنَدَ وَالْإِسْنَادِ لِشَيْءٍ وَاحِدٍ. All of these prove that there is no contradiction between what Hafiz ibn Hajar mentioned here and between what he wrote on page 106. So we now concluded that Isnaad and Sanad and Turuq all have the same meaning, so that leads to an objection. Allama Qasim ibn Qutlubagha in Al-Qawl al-Mubtakar, he said, وَالْمُرَادُ بِالطُّرُقِ الْأَسَانِيد مُسْتَدْرَكْ وَضَائِعْ وَصَارَ الْحَاصِلْ أَنَّ الطَّرِيقِ حِكَايَةُ الطَّرِيقِ. That if you are saying Turuq and Asanid all have the same meaning, then you are defining a word by itself. That Ibn Hajar rahimahullah is mentioning that they all have the same meaning, and then he's using the same words. He's saying, well, isnadu hikayatu tariqil matni. So he is defining a word with itself, because isnad means tariq. So technically, what Ibn Hajar said, well, isnadu hikayatu tariqil matni, it means, well, isnadu hikayatu isnadil matni, or well, tariq hikayatu tariq. And other commentators have also said, لَزِمَ مِنْهُ إِضَافَةُ الشَّيْءِ إِلَى نَفْسِهِ. In essence, one is making idafa of something to its self. So reading these objections here, it also demonstrates to us the sharpness of the minds of these scholars and how scholars would listen and read through with a critical lens. Nevertheless, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah responded to this objection by stating التحقيق أن تكون الإضافة بيانية في قوله حكاية طريق المتن. But this response did not fully satisfy Allama Qasim, and therefore he said التحقيق خلاف هذا التحقيق لأن الحكاية فعل والطريق اسم الرواة فلا يصح أن يكون أحدهما عين الآخر. In conclusion, it would have been better if Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah reproduced the definition that he stated on page 106 here at the beginning of the book. And it would have also been ideal if he clearly said that Sanad and Isnad have the same meaning. Had he done that, it would have not led us to, we would not have needed to give this long explanation. But the conclusion is that Isnad and Sanad all have the same meaning. Inshallah, we'll continue from here. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum.